So Carrie and I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for dropping in on how to get paid. A summer refresher is going to be on compliance, as well as some tips on the part in which really focuses on how to get paid. And so the structure of what we're going to do is this: we're going to ask you a question. And then if you can put that in the chat, or if you want to participate live, you can definitely do that. But what we want to do is ask you a guiding question, and then we're going to jump right into the presentation. So we have a PowerPoint slide, and a segment of the PowerPoint slide actually has a breakdown of best practices. So it gives you, for the compliance best practices, a step-by-step best practice guide. And then for how to get paid, the managing commissions tab, it also will give you a breakdown of best practices. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to shift gears from that, and we're actually going to do hands-on, walking you through how to create an opportunity, addressing any of your questions or concerns that you have. So in order to start, does that sound good, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do, what I would love for you to do, if you can, I would love for you to either tell us now and or put it in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with, but let us know what questions do you have as of now, as it relates to compliance or how to get paid, or any aspect of, submitting all of your forms, whether it's you or your TC or you're the TC that's on the training. What questions do you have? So if you can put that in there, that would be great, because we're going to make sure that we address those specific questions throughout the training. So that's going to help us guide us. So if you can take the time to put that in the chat. I think Nikki did as well.
Nikki said first time with all of this, so she's super excited. We're excited too. This is kind of cool, geeky stuff, but we love helping, and we love making sure that you all, after all of your hard work, get paid on time.
Awesome. And I think Jill echoed that same thing from Nikki. So can you all see my screen? And we're going to go to this part. And
Christine had a great question while Latasha's loading up the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
No, you're good. Who, I guess, in regards to exceptions and requirements, who those are addressed with? That's a great question. I know we'll cover that today.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, Carrie. So Carrie and I, he's my counterpart and my partner in crime and my go-to. So we definitely collaborate. And from what I heard, and Carrie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have started a trend in terms of the way that you and I communicate, the way that we collaborate in terms of Oahu and Maui. Is that correct? That we are the trendsetters?
That sounds right. It's kind of weird how when you start having that and doing that, and it's great to get confirmation, because you're thinking of something and, hey, this is kind of weird, or am I on the right track? And then Latasha will text me, hey, I'm thinking this. No way. So in regards to even as agents, right, the markets may be different, but what you guys do on a daily basis is so similar. So if you start networking and talking to people on Oahu from Maui, or Oahu to Maui, Maui to Oahu, Kauai, Big Island, really considering us all islands and one ohana is kind of the way to go.
Calista had a great point. She wanted a recap of how to submit the final package to the compliance officer. We are definitely going to cover that as well. So let's get right into it. All right, so framing questions. This is for you just to think on, food for thought. What questions do you have regarding compliance or commission? We did address that already, and we will make sure, and if we do not, make sure to remind us that we did not cover or address your question, or if you have a follow-up question. What challenges do you face when completing the compliance commission? So that's food for thought. So as we're going through this, let us know. And then what do you need to make this process work for you? So I would love it if you can, at some point in time in the chat, as we go through this, if you can make notes in the chat box of what do you need to make your job easier. So if you can add that to it, that would be great feedback for Carrie and I, so that we can take that to our leadership and we can make sure that we do the best we can. Carrie, my internet is unstable, so I'm going to make sure I'm going to pass the, oh shoot, I can't pass the host to you. So if not, I'll jump back on. So
Bill wants to have more time and make more time. I think it's definitely my needed Star Wars reference of the day. Hey, Bill, if we could, stop time, speed up the harvest, or teleport me off this rock.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Cool. So the agenda we talked about a little bit. It's open to all transaction managers and coordinators, whatever your title is, agents. Training is primarily geared toward mastering compliance through command. Some basic things, making sure that first of all, you are in Chrome whenever you're utilizing command and or incognito. Thankfully, the last year, we have not had the suggestion to be in an incognito window. So if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. But we've really worked on, or I should say KWRI has worked on really making command robust. And so we have not had to rely on incognito. We just, as long as you're in Chrome, you typically have less issues. We're talking about the workflow grid, compliance and commission best practices, which I alluded to earlier. So that's what we're going to do. And also, sorry, Q&A. Let's see, just keeping track of what's going on. Okay. All right, so command users. The reason why I want to start out with this is because, and Carrie and I talked about this, we just want to make sure that you understand like how people are using command and how, more importantly, you're using command. So who, in terms of the user type, if you can put that in the chat in terms of where you are, and it's okay if you are at 2 and or under, but where are you? So if you can put that in the chat in terms of where you are in terms of command, meaning, are you a basic user? You're just utilizing contacts and opportunities. Are you an intermediate user? You have 2 to 3 applets. Typically, they are contacts, opportunities, and Facebook. Are you an advanced user? Are you using contacts, opportunities, Facebook, designs, etc.? How you use command as of now is going to help us. So when we answer your questions, we know how to start the foundational piece of the response. So if you can put that in the chat, that would be great. Again, if you're basic, even if you're 0 applets to 2, basic, intermediate 2 to 3, and advanced. If you can put that in the chat, that would help us guide us as we answer your questions. Great. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, so this is the workflow. Some of you have seen this before, but it's really appropriate to understand the workflow and how things work within command. So there's going to be some, you'll see there's green and then there's blue. Green is what you must do in terms of getting paid in command. So the first thing, you want to create a contact. You have to, everything starts with a contact. I'm just going to do the green portion only. You want to create an opportunity, which we're going to review, and Carrie's going to be my Vanna, and he's going to show us how to do that. And so then create an offer. Then you want to create an offer. And then from there, you want to add documents to an opportunity for compliance. Then you submit the compliance. So that's the starting pieces. And we're going to get into the actual best practice in just a minute, but that is the workflow, the basic workflow for starting the compliance journey. Carrie, any thoughts, follow up, any additional adds?
No, that's a good look. And I think as we do have varied and a varied audience, right? Even as an agent, like command can do so much, but it's really focused on what you need to do to drive your business, and you may not use all things. So even if you typed into chat like you're a basic user and it kind of made you feel weird inside or whatever, if you're watching YouTube, it's all right. Like use it for what you need and you can grow it. And at the same time, you're not going to use everything.
Thanks, Carrie. Okay, so getting into the best practice. So this is for the compliance. You can feel free to take snapshots of this. You will also receive this PowerPoint presentation as well as the next 3 slides. We will put them on the intranet for Maui. And then Carrie, do you guys have like the intranet documents as well? Okay, so I'll give it to Kerry as well so he can upload it for the Oahu peeps. And Kauai, I guess I need to start making sure I say Oahu and Kauai. So those peeps. So again, best practice for compliance. So we're going to take it in chunks. We're going to first talk about compliance, then we're going to talk about commission. So first, make sure your opportunity is in the active stage so your BIC has access. Meaning this, following it logically, when you have a contact, you enter the contact or you already have it entered in command, then you create an opportunity. When you start working that opportunity and you get ready to start uploading documents into compliance, which we'll get to later, you want to make sure it's in the active stage. Kerry's going to show us how to do that shortly. But the reason why you want to make sure it's in the active stage is because if your BIC has any questions, if it is in any stage before active, they cannot see it. So you just want to make sure that it's in the active stage once you begin loading documents so your BIC has access. How to title the opportunities? Oh my God, you guys are so smart. Great question. So there's two ways for Maui and Big Island agents. You want to have the client name, the listing or buyer, and the address. Maui does it slightly different than Oahu, Kauai, because when you start from the contact and you create the opportunity, it's going to automatically have the client name and whether it's the listing or buyer. And then we're just asking you to add the address to it. Oahu, Kauai is a little different. So they want the street name. I'll let you talk about that, Kerry, because you're the professional in that.
No, we just asked Oahu and Kauai. We are going to put the street name, right? Number, unit number up front. We're going to make sure we have that contact name in there, whether or not it's a buyer or a seller. And again, and just making sure that you have your name there as the agent, right? So like Latasha said about the BICs and having a separate viewing access. So with those three pieces of information, they could choose whichever one and they could find the opportunity. So we just, a little same but different.
Yep. So update your opportunities weekly. This is just a guide, a suggestion. I know you're all busy. All documents when you're within your transaction should be loaded as you move through the process. So that's the best practice. You want to make sure you keep your timeline as up to date as possible. And here is the biggest thing about compliance. For Maui, it's a little different than Oahu. So Maui Big Island agents, we ask that you submit all files. So when you notice that when you have files, and we'll show you this, there's going to be 3 envelopes or folders, if you will. You have to submit each folder separately, and you have to do that at least 5 days prior to close. This is for compliance only. 5 days prior to close, you want to submit those folders and email Rob, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But this is for Big Island Maui, and for Oahu, it's slightly different. They're doing 10 days prior to close. You want to submit that information. Keep in mind that when you hit submit on the compliance side, that information goes to our compliance officer, not the MCA. So even though the MCA has access to that, the compliance officer is the one that's monitoring the compliance piece only in terms of those folders and documents.
What is the MCA? Yeah, I'm sorry. What is the MCA?
The MCA, great question, Market Center Administrator. So for us on Maui and Big Island, that is Shelby in the Maui office. And then for Kerry and Oahu and Kauai, that is Miss Christie. Great question. So anything you want to add, Kerry, before I go to the next caveat for compliance? Okay, perfect. So within that email to the compliance officer, meaning that following it logically, you submitted each folder, you hit submit, that goes to the compliance. And then as a follow-up, you want to make sure you send an email to the compliance officer, 946@kw.com. In the email subject, you want to have your property address, and the email body, you want to have the opportunity ID, which will show you where that is a little later. Agent name, email, BIC name, email, escrow number, officer, and email. You want to have that in the body of the email to let the compliance officer know that you are ready to have your documents reviewed. Then, if you're waiting for escrow, and we've gotten into this situation, it started happening, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, it started happening a little more frequently last year with everything that was going on. But what we were noticing is that many of the agents were getting ready to close, and they were still waiting on closing documents from the escrow company because the escrow companies were being slammed with work. And so what we did as a group is we decided that as long as you had the first two folders, and on the listing side, it would be listing and under contract, and on the buyer side, it would be consultation and under contract. As long as you had those two folders, meaning all of the required documents you needed, you had them, you could still go ahead and go through the process to make sure that you were paid on closing. And then just 5 days after closing, you had to then go back in the system and update or add those closing documents. If you didn't do that, you would forfeit the opportunity to utilize that more. But again, that was just in an effort to make sure that all agents were paid at closing, because that's our goal. The reason why we have this system in place is we just want to make sure that everything is done correctly so that you and or the agent you represent get paid on time. Everybody wants to get paid on time. So day of closing. Yes, Jill, I'm sorry.
I'm not understanding. You will forfeit the opportunity to utilize this for future deals. What does that mean?
Great question. Meaning this. So let's say, Jill, you are waiting on the escrow company to give you some closing documents. However, you have everything you needed for the first two folders, and you go ahead and submit that. And then we go through the process, or I shouldn't say we, but us in general, we go through the process, you get your check on closing. It's up to you to follow up with the escrow company to make sure those closing documents that you did not have previously, that you now have, you go back in the system, add them to that third folder, and then submit that to Rob. If you don't do that, then that means you will not be able to do that again, meaning we won't be able to, in a position to help you take advantage of this opportunity, because we are helping you out to get paid.
Okay, thank you.
Did I explain that well?
You did perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's
thank
not a punitive measure. It's just that we want to try to do everything we can to help.
Mhm.
Day of closing. So day of closing, you submit all your final closing documents, such as final closing statements, satisfaction, FIPTA, HARFTA, all of those great things. Jill, do you still have your hand up, or?
Oh, no, that needs to
Okay,
come down.
gotcha. Okay. Then after closing, you want to update the opportunity. Keep in mind that you want to move the opportunity to closed only. Don't archive it. If you archive it, then if there's ever any issue, the BIC won't be able to help you because they can't see it. So making sure that when you, at the end, once you're closed and you've got all your documents done, move that opportunity to closed only. Carrie, do you want to add anything before I finish the rest of these slides?
No, that was great. I think too, when we hit the walkthrough and really have you guys participate in it, some of it will then kind of, oh, that's what we're talking about right now. So
Right.
if you're kind of having a hard time grasping, I'm a visual learner, so don't worry about it. We'll get there and ask questions.
Bella, you had a question? Is your hand up? No?
Sorry, had to unmute myself. Sorry about that. Yeah, actually, you mentioned that if we archive it, what you said to close it, not archive it. Is that permanently, or is that just for a period of time? At some point, are you ever going to want to archive it?
Great question. No. The short answer, no. You are never wanting to archive it at this point in time. We may decide to make a change later on, depending on how we can retrieve documents. Because right now, the way that command functions on the back end for us is that if you as the agent archive something, no one has access to that. So if there were ever any pending litigation or anything, nuances that needed to be revisited for a deal, we would not have the ability. And I say we, KW leadership in Maui and or Oahu does not have a way to get into that agent's back end system, because that's
Okay.
your proprietary information.
Okay, how does that apply to document retention policies then?
So-
If I can jump in, I think
Yeah.
as clarity is power, I think it's the verbiage, right? In regards to majority of CRMs in regards to real estate, when you're talking about archive, it's almost synonymous with trashing. Contact is no good, I'm going to archive it, right? They said, don't call them, I'm going to archive it. So in regards to command, it's kind of the same thought. When you archive something, it's because you don't want to go back to it ever. It's not really any good information. What Natasha is saying with opportunities, if you move it to closed, it sits there in closed. It's not active, it drops off of your pipeline, but you move it from open into closed and it just gets stored.
Okay,
So when you select and you click a menu and see archive opportunity, that's not necessarily something that you want to do unless maybe you made a mistake. You created a buy opportunity and you saved it, and it's actually supposed to be a list side opportunity.
okay. I
Yeah.
can see how that would, the archive versus trash would cause a confusion at that point, because I archive the hell out of everything after a certain period of
Like a
time.
storage,
But,
yeah.
but I don't throw it away. I mean, I've got an email archive that you don't even want to know how old it is. So
Yes. Thanks, Carrie, for that. Yes. Christine, you had a question.
I do have a question, just some clarification on the first bullet point there that says, keep in mind 5 days prior to close, if you have the 2 folders complete. There are many times, most all the time, that the estimated settlement statement is not ready 5 days prior to. So how does that come into play?
There's a tip and a trick that we can discuss later. But
Okay,
I know what you're talking about. Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Awesome. Anything else? All right. So commission. So now we're switching gears from compliance to commission and giving you just some basic guidance. So this is a little different than compliance. This applies to both Maui, Oahu, Kauai, Big Island. 2 weeks, not 5 days, 2 weeks prior to close, you want to submit your commission tab, meaning the managed commission, which we'll get into. We'll show you what that means. The reason is because this is the step that is needed for you to receive the DA and or distribution authorization. That goes to the MCA, which is either Christy or Shelby. So again, 2 weeks prior to close, you want to submit your commission tab to begin the DA process. Christine?
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand
Okay,
up.
no, sorry. Okay, I'll lower it. I just wasn't sure if you had, there you go. Okay. Whoops. So include how or who is getting, so going back to commission tab, and it'll make sense once we get to that. When you're in the commission tab on the right-hand side, you'll have notes. In the notes, you want to make sure that you add who or how is GET getting paid. You want to include your escrow officer name, email, and escrow ID. You want to add any referral information if it applies. You want to include coaching fee if it applies, and or lead program if applicable. Include anything else that would affect your commission, meaning is there anything that needs to be taken out of your commission that you know of, and or the agent that you or agents that you represent. You want to add that stuff to the note side. Once you submit the commission tab to generate or start the process to receive that DA, you want to email to MCA. In this case for Maui Big Island, it would be Shelby at KLRW1002. If you notice, that's just Keller Williams and acronym, and then our market center number. And so then for Oahu, Kauai, it would be Christy's email, and that is the email. So within that subject, again, we have a system that helps commission requests submitted for, and then put your property address. And then again, similar to the compliance, just the opportunity ID, agent name, broker name, escrow ID, officer name, and email. So that is the tab for the commission best practice. So again, take pictures of it. You'll receive this as well. Carrie, anything before I move on?
You're good.
Okay, so help, and then we're going to get right into it. So how commissions tab works within Command, you can either reach out to me and or Carrie. Specific questions about what information to include in the commission tab, that is a broker question. Compliance questions, reach out to Michelle Del Rosario. But if it's compliance related to your documents, it would be Michelle as well as Rob. Or I didn't, and I do apologize, I did not put the information for compliance questions for Oahu and Kauai. So Carrie, whenever you get time, if you can put that in there. I did not have that, so I do apologize for that. And then getting paid questions about my check or your check. You want to reach out to the MCA, Shelby and or Christy, and that is kind of rounding out who to go to for what. But you can always reach out to Carrie or I if you need some questions or clarity on anything. But in general, these are your buckets of communication. All right, so we're going to dive into it. I'm going to stop share. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr.
I get to drive. Awesome. Just by show of little reaction emojis in our Zoom, who you guys all got little document files. If you register early, I sent an email with some document files for you to download. They're just blank templates of an ERS or a J1. If you didn't, I've put them in the chat. If you are currently working with something and you want to just use your files for your test, we'd love you to do that, right? So at this point, if you are able to kind of multitask, I'm going to share my screen. So if you can have your Zoom and also open up your command, we definitely want it to have this be like a very, very workshop-y session. So you guys got all my command screen going on right now? Is that
Yes.
right? Yes, awesome. And by a show of little emoji thumbs up, who in the Zoom has yourself as a contact right now?
Yes.
Bill does. Awesome. Jill, yes. Awesome. Because great. Andy, awesome. So because anytime you test, even if it's smart plans or to play in the system, always the best thing to do is to use yourself, right? The system will always ask you a second time before you implement anything, but always to just have something free where you're not worried about accidentally sending out information or changing somebody else's contact. Having yourself in there is best practice. So if you do have yourself, we're going to click on the opportunity applet, which is that handshake, right? We're doing business, shucking and jiving. Latasha says, shucking and jiving, we're going to bring it back. Yeah. So Teal is your friend. And so, of course, you can start with the contact, but we're looking at this opportunity applet. We're going to say create opportunity. You see a drop down. And as we go through this, please make sure you get some hands-on work yourself and let me know if I'm going too fast. But you'll see the dialog box come up. In here, we're going to say, and it doesn't matter which one you use for this test, buyer or seller, right? We're just going to say in this case, listing. And because it's my test and I'm a super huge geek, I should have Captain America Steve Rogers in here. So he's my client I'm choosing to work with today. So for yourselves, have yourself as a client and tie yourself to this test opportunity. So in this case, I'm going to go 123 Main Street is my listing. And of course, on Oahu, we say seller, just so that there's clarity. And we are going to say AGT Carrie Scoville. So for right now, for you folks, right, listing, assigning yourself as a client and having the opportunity name. And for right now, if you did a 123 Main Street and the main thing is just making sure that we're getting some reps in this, right?
Terry, can I jump in for just 1 minute?
Yes, ma'am.
So just a reminder for Maui Big Island, originally when he started, it had Steve Rogers and then it said listing. All you need to do is at the end of that, just put the address in there. So I just wanted to make sure that that's the nuance that we had called out in the.
Let's do that. So that. So as you attach a client, as Latasha was saying, it already populates with that. And so you guys would just be able to 1, 2, 3 Main Street. Is that right?
Correct.
Perfect. And we're all there so far? Thumbs up? Cool. So far, so good. No questions. Don't be afraid to unmute yourself during this time as well and just kind of give us a shout out. Nikki, thank you for the thumbs up there. And we're just going to take a look at what's required. Here's where you can put some custom tags, different from contact tags. This allows you to just say, I have a tag, referral by Latasha Baldwin. At the end of the year, I can look at my sales report and filter by how many referrals did Latasha send me, and then I'd be able to identify all those opportunities. So tagging, you may or may not need to use it, but it's there for you, right? And we're going to say commission rate. This is a listing, so we'll just say 3%. And estimated list price, $1 million. So opportunity phase and stage is just where this opportunity is going to come onto our sales pipeline. And so, of course, if it's something where he's a potential client and I'm cultivating or setting the appointment, you're gonna do that. But for the sake of our example, why don't we just go, this was an active listing. Like Latasha said, they were going to make it an ad.
How did you get to estimated close date? I'm not seeing that on my screen.
Oh, if you're still in
Oh,
your,
there it is.
Yep.
No, I'm sorry, I missed it. Sorry.
oh
there it is.
no, you're perfect. And that's why we're doing it like workshop style, so you guys can see it. And then, so let's do opportunity phase active. And we're going to move it into active. And you know what? We've written an offer and we're in negotiations. Okay.
Wait, where is all of that?
All the way down underneath the bottom, underneath the estimated closing date. Scroll down just a bit more.
Okay, active. There we go. Sorry. Yep.
No, you're good, Jill. You're good.
And
So
then
assignees, you're gonna see yourself if you're on a team, right? For the TCs, maybe you're TCing for a team. Make sure that you have whoever is working that particular opportunity. Make sure the right agent is on that opportunity, right? Your buyers, buyer agents can only see what they're tagged onto or assigned to. So you'll hit create. And so at this point, we want to get to the guts of what's going to help us get paid, right? So if this property box is going to be super important, and so that's why, and there's a little gray pencil, it's a little hard to see, but right up on top of the property box, if you clicked on that pencil, let's go ahead and.
can I just ask another question? I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, Jill.
Corey, so I'm hitting create and nothing's happening. Could it be that I missed something?
You might have missed one of the required pieces of information.
I think I filled everything.
So Jill, may I jump in? The
Yes.
key thing that you want to keep in mind is look for the fields that have a red asterisk. As long as you got something in those, and if not, just hit refresh. It may just be your internet. Because I know on the islands, all of the islands have had issues with internet. So if you just hit refresh, it should go in and refresh it, and you should be able to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So again, so the property box, if you were to type in an address, you'll see that Google wants to just automatically find it. Okay, so there's actually a 123 Main Street in Honolulu. That's awesome. So you'll see it pre-fill, but what you notice, if this was an apartment building, it ties to the street address, right? You can go back in after that point, and if you needed to assign a unit number, you could.
Could I add one thing, Carrie?
Yes.
In terms of helping you with the compliance and managing piece, the other thing that in the brilliant way that Carrie pointed this out, you can also, for those listings that are, for whatever reason, they're not in MLS, or maybe the buyer did not want to put it on MLS and or land deals. Sometimes you'll need to manually add those addresses in there. So you can manually add land or whatever. So that will also, if you don't have it in there, it will prevent you from being able to hit submit for the managed commission piece. So make sure that you utilize this also for those listings that may not be on MLS for whatever reason, and or for vacant lots.
And you can see where you don't need the Google address, to Latasha's point. You can type in what grew up coaching baseball. And so, hey, there's a vacant lot behind the ballpark that I want to purchase. And you just type in that to identify the property. Okay. So now here, and then you'll see this little signage come up here with what you typed in as far as the address goes. Okay. Now,
So can you just back up a second? Because I had to re-enter everything in. So how
Hmm.
did we get to this screen?
So right here on the property box, once you hit create, it's going to open up automatically into the opportunity, right? This opportunity we created.
Got it.
And then you're
And-
going to just click on that property, the pencil right here by the property box, and enter in your test property, or so you can just say vacant lot. And now you're
Okay.
syncing the property itself to the opportunity, right? And while you do that, note on the top left here, so we have our client name and we have the property that they're doing. These two little links right here will either bring you back to your listing pipeline or all the way back out to the opportunity homepage, right? So sometimes you just want to stay in where you are. We're going to click on listing active, and that pops us up right over here, right? We created the opportunity in the active phase under negotiations. So when you're ready, and TCs, when you're working for an agent that they open escrow, all you do is you click on the card and you see it turn blue. So let's click on that card and we're gonna drag it over where it says under contract. You see the under contract section turn blue, and we're just gonna drop it there.
Okay, can you go back up again and do that one more time?
Oh,
Because I'm
cool.
not
Yeah, no, I got
on the same
in here.
screen there. Thank you.
So we
Paul.
are under the listing active phase, right? And so we should have our test card there. We're just going to click it.
I'm not seeing that.
So Jill, if you see, are you at this stage? Are you seeing that screen
I'm not
on your
seeing that.
computer? Okay.
No,
So
I'm
if
on
you
the
look at
screen
the-
before that.
This one?
Okay.
No,
So then if
I'm
you,
not- oh, I just finished doing the address. So,
oh, perfect. Perfect. So at the top left,
uh-huh,
it says listing. And then we're going to hit that. Yours should say listing inactive. Right? And so when you click on the right-hand side, the link on the right-hand side, it brings you back out to your listing inactive phase. Okay? And so at
I
that
don't
point,
see, I'm not seeing anything like what you're describing. I'm back on a page that says details, seller profile documents, offers and commissions, notes and timeline.
Can you
With the
go back
opportunity-
one more, Carrie? to
Yeah,
see?
and you know
Oh,
what we'll
there.
do too. You know what we'll do too. We'll make sure that we cover this and get some extra help out that way. Want to make sure
Okey-doke.
we get this.
So the page you just were on,
Mhm.
that's where I am. So now how do you get to this one?
Great. So hit this blue link right here, listings, and it should say active if you just created it.
Oh, in
Okay.
the upper left, okay,
Upper left. So you see your pipeline.
got it, okay.
Okay, now if you click on the card, and while we do this, everybody else that's clicking and dragging, give us a thumbs up, making sure we're all on the same page. You click on the card, it turns blue, and you can drag it through your thing, and you're going to click and hover over the under contract phase. And when that turns blue, so basically we're moving our opportunity from active over to, hey, we're opening a new escrow. Calista said she's got it. Awesome. Okay.
I moved it to under contract and then lost it.
That's okay. Sometimes it takes a little practice of finding the right spot. So you're okay, and you're in good company. Okay. So once we're under contract, and you can see there it is.
Okay,
Okay. So let's go back and let's take a look at, we opened escrow. And so we have a bunch of documents. Here is where the rubber meets the road, right? There's two things that are going to be in play in regards to getting paid on time and your compliance. One is going to be the process of entering the documents themselves. And the second is going to be, are the documents fully executed and properly executed? So the two come into play where if you're having a hard time with the process and command, that's where you reach out to Latasha and myself. If you have, and there's a question in the chat, who's responsible for exceptions to requirements? That's going to be your BIC, right? Like if you have something out of the ordinary, ask your BIC to make sure that you're executing things properly. And then Latasha and I can help you get them in the right place. That makes sense?
Mhm.
Cool. So now that we're in our document section, you're going to make sure to pick a checklist type. And for the most part, it's going to be residential sale. So we're going to make sure that we pick a checklist type, and you're going to see this kind of drop down listed under contract and close. If you're working with a buyer example, it'll say consultation under contract and close. So each of these three things, as you click through them, they're going to be actually different unique checklists and checklist items. Okay, so in this case, if we went to the listed, you can see that some are going to be required, some are going to be optional per what you are saying and stating as part of your specific contract, and some of them are conditional. So again, each opportunity and transaction is unique. As an agent, you know that. So this is kind of more of a framework and a guideline. You're not going to plug and play every one, but only what is required per your contract. Okay. And so in this case, you'll notice on the right, there's some options here. And right now it's just, I'm not linked to DocuSign, which is like a 201, like a little bit advanced class. Right now, I'm just attaching files from my computer. So in this case, you don't have to browse and open up a window. I have my files here. I'm just going to, on my computer, I'm going to click and drag my file over. My exclusive right to sell is in there. Oahu peeps, on your exclusive right to sell on A11, we over disclose. So on A11, if you're using our brokerage account, you'll see standard addenda, ABA, COVID addenda, and dual addenda, because we're explaining all of that to the listing person. You got to include those inside of your contract here, right? And then so you'll do the ABA, which I've got. And so if you did get those files and practice, or you have your practice example right now, go ahead and try and click and drag some documents and put them into place. Okay. And then there's different requirements, right? With the, hey, we want the active listing, we're under contract, it should be on the MLS, or you have like a waiver, or you have a contract that says you're going to list it or put it on there after it's closed, right? Once you add your documents, you'll start to see that section now says open. So that's your notation that there's documents in there, right?
So,
Yes, Jill.
so I keep going under documents, and I'm not seeing anything that says listed under contract or closed.
So on this side, under the document tab, make sure you start by, it says select a checklist. And
I
it
don't-
click on,
I don't have a checklist. I don't have
Okay.
any,
Jill,
anything
let
showing
me-
up.
If I may, let's you and I schedule one-on-one, and then I'll walk you through it on your, so we can actually see your screen. So would that help you? So just reach out to me and let's set up a one-on-one.
we'll set up an
for
extra time.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sure, but in the
Okay.
meantime, I'm right with you up to documents, and nothing is showing up on my,
If nothing is showing up, is you have to select a checklist type. And so you'll see a little drop down over here that says, please select checklist type. And then
That-
for the
it's not-
example,
it's just
yeah,
not
and
there though.
then we'll have to take a look. If you're not seeing anything and you're at this document tab, we'll take a look, Jill, and we'll make sure everything is working okay. And then, so then maybe just at this point, I would say maybe just follow all along and understand like the concept of it.
Great.
And then so under contract section, right, this is then going to tell you and show you and what is required. And so per the layout, this is, and for the TCs and admins, right, you have escrow instructions, your purchase contract, right? Was there a counter? That's conditional. If there was a counter, what are we striking? What are we adding? And so again, if we had a seller executed standard and then we made the standard addenda part of our purchase contract, now we can add the Keller Williams standard addenda that's signed by both the buyer and the seller. And you're just, all you're doing is filling it out to what your contract or counter says. Okay, so then you'll see a lot of the purchase contract, a lot of the addenda up top here, right, along with the co-op. I have a blank co-op broker form, right? And all you're doing is you're filling it in and what you need for your unique transaction. So we're scrolling down past some of the addenda here. I can throw a lead-based paint form there until we start seeing a required section again. So here is where you'll see the timeline, your prelim, and then a lot of the contingencies based upon the purchase contract. Okay,
Terry, may I jump in for a minute?
yes, you can.
Could you show them, for those that may need it, how to sort by the required so it actually funnels up? So then
Absolutely.
that may, especially for the newer basic users, that would be helpful for them. So they're not looking through it and feeling like they're missing something.
Sure. You can, as you scroll down to Latasha's point, is if you hit every column is reverse sortable, so you can make all the required documents fly up to the top. You can reverse sort it so some of the optional stuff and addenda rise to the top. And then again, the base format is kind of more helpful too for that person just starting out, because it starts with the contract and runs you through all your addenda, and then it runs you through your contingencies. And so if you followed the format here, you'd be in a pretty good place, right? And then when it comes to what's required or what's not, again, it's per contract. So your BIC is going to be the perfect person to ask. As we get down to the bottom of the under contract section, now we have both these sections filled out. And if you are following along, you'll see both those sections as open. And you'll notice as we get to the bottom, as you move through the contingencies based upon your contract, you'll see J1, SRPDS, your seller disclosures, K2, and termite. Termite is generally the last thing that you guys are doing, right? 10 to 14 days prior to close, depending on your contract. Now, as that report comes in, there's not a lot of left under this section. Anybody remember what's done 2 weeks prior to close that Latasha mentioned earlier?
You submit.
Your commission. You submit, right? You submit your commission, which generates your distribution authorization.
Jill gets a gold star.
It's coming, it's there. And then the last thing is the seller or the buyer estimated for your under contract section. Okay. So at that point, which is still, if you caught the early bus, notice we've got the termite, we're 10 to 14 days prior to closing, in which case we have our DA, and then we can ask escrow, hey, here's the DA, could we get our estimated statement? And then we'll talk about what Callisto, Christine was saying about sometimes not being able to get it early. We'll talk about that. Bill, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I'm watching you go through here, and I see you're doing a lot of dragging and dropping of the items into so that you have the forms uploaded then. However, I'm not seeing anything active on this page. Looking through my command session as well, I'm not seeing anything active. So when you drop like the lead paint example for a couple minutes ago, when you drop the lead paint example in there, where are you dragging it from? Because I'm not seeing that as a clickable item anywhere.
So I like doing that. And so you'll have your documents on your computer. So, and then I know the Zoom doesn't allow for my other window to show, but
okay.
I like that better. And so I have like, each transaction has a folder. Each folder has FE documents or documents as they come in. So if you hit browse will pull up everything on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll kind of close if you say open and you add the document, which is why I just have my transaction folder open on another window, and I'm just pulling what I need.
Okay.
Good question. So as far as the layout and the flow of it, and maybe some of the timing that we're starting to mention, 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days, and then we're already at the bottom of our under contract section. Does that kind of make sense?
Okay, can you just do me one favor though? So from
Yes.
go back to the page before this and see, because I'm just really wanting to be able to get as much as I
Sure,
can.
we'll take a,
So
so,
I'm in details.
okay, so click on documents, the third little,
Yep.
Link.
And when I do, absolutely nothing shows
Okay.
up.
so
So
down
that's my,
here on,
okay, so
right,
that's, no, I don't have anything. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that I knew what my problem was.
yeah, oh yeah,
No,
absolutely.
So nothing is showing up on my underneath.
Your screen underneath is gonna be blank, but then there's a little drop down arrow on your left, right over here.
That's not on my screen.
That's
So
not on your screen. Okay,
yeah,
perfect. Then we know, yeah, then we know
That's where
what
we're
the
stuck.
issue is. Perfect. Okay, so at that point, we've got our DA from our MCA. We're gonna reach out to escrow. Now, the seller side, you might have more immediate response, right? Because they're working to pay this thing off. Sometimes escrow, to Christine's point, they say, hey, we don't have the estimated just yet. Remind the escrow officer that we don't need final payoff, right? So the buyers, and they're trying to figure out what that final number is. We're looking for an estimate of their escrow costs to be totally, radically transparent with you all. They need to provide, as an agent and for your client, they need to provide an estimated settlement and then a final settlement at closing. And you're supposed to kind of reconcile and make sure that everything is accurate, right? So what happens a lot of times is they're saying they're waiting for final escrow or final settlement numbers, and they're getting the two documents on the very same day, and it's really not helpful to anybody, right? So you've got to be a little bit more pushy. Even for us nice guys, we kind of got to go, hey, you know what? I get what you're saying. I don't need final loan numbers. I'm looking for an escrow statement of escrow costs, if that's helpful for that question. Okay, so then now you've got your estimated settlement. Now you've got everything that you need, and we're still 8 to 10 days prior to close. Okay, at that point, what you're going to do is then you're going to see this blue button right here, and I've clicked back to listed. I'm going to hit submit to MC, and it's going to say, are you sure? It's like, yeah, I'm ready. I've got everything and I'm ready. And you see it hit submitted and it changes, right? This button says submitted. We also have to go to under contract, and we have to submit that section as well. So back to Latasha's point about closing and closing documents, we're not asking for that just yet. We want you guys and we want our agents to get paid on time and paid at closing. So we need to make sure your contract, one, you have the right to sell the listing. That should be done super early. And the under contract section is done. And we hit submit. And you could submit that 10 days prior to close if you had it all. Right? Maui is 5 days, but Latasha and I both agree the earlier you get it in, the better. Okay. And so what we do both all agree on after that is we send that email to comp officer. Pop open my messy Gmail. And we are going to then trick out that email for the comp officer, right, for Rob. And why there's a triggering email, that question comes up a lot. We hit submit on the command side, and we don't always. Sometimes we forget. So the triggering email is there almost like a check and balance for yourself, because you or your TC is agreeing at that moment of submittal that, hey, you know what, I've got everything. I'm saying, and I'm declaring that I've got everything I need for you to review. This file is complete, right? So if you are then triggering it to comp officer 946, and compliance is black and white, so you don't need any fluff. You just say ready for review, and your opportunity ID is back here on your details tab. Right underneath the word details itself, there's your opportunity ID number.
Can I call something else out to you, Carrie, while you're saying that? For those of you also, if you keep an eye on this, whether you're the TC or the agent, if you keep an eye on this, sometimes you may even get notification through the system for the DA. So once Carrie jumps back I'll show you where your DA information is going to go. Either Christy and or Shelby is going to put that in the back end, and I'll show you where you can see that DA number in case you ever need to reference that as well.
And then once you have your agent BIC and your escrow ID number with your op ID, then you hit send. And so let's go back. And we are looking for,
Right there.
right there. There's your DA ID number. So as far as the submittal process, right, we've added documents per our unique transaction. We've hit submit on both the listing and the under contract side. If you're working with the buyer, you only have under contract. And then you submit that, you trigger it, and you catch the early bus. Those thoughts, we're doing okay so far? Thumbs up?
Good.
Yeah?
Thank you, Carrie.
Awesome. Everybody else there, give us a emoji party symbol if you are sleeping right now. Okay, so what happens? Hey, Bill, thank you. Bill's asleep. Okay, so what happens is Rob reviews it under 24 to 48 hours, right? And so what he's going to do is he's going to check your documents to being fully executed, right? There's nothing like working so hard on this transaction and then something's not compliant and somebody gets buyer's remorse or whatever happens, right? You don't want to get sued, right? So why compliance is here to protect you. So you'll see Rob will send you an email. A lot of times it'll say, hey, please check your notes in command. And so when you go back to revisit the transaction, you're going to see what category maybe has returned and where the error is. And he'll tell you, oh, my ERS was, if you hover over it, his note will pop up and say, oh, I'm missing a BIC signature on this. Okay, great. Let's correct that. Right. So if you are submitting and doing this initial process, at least 5 days prior to closing, you're allowing yourself time, one, for the review. Two, you're allowing yourself time to make corrections. And where we strive to be a great professional and really good at what we do, we're human. There's going to be things missing and it's okay, right? But we want to catch them ahead of time. We want to be very confident in our contract, what's needed to be there as addenda. And then you can still, should you miss something, because we're all human, you still have time to go back to the co-op and say, hey, Latasha, can I get a signature here on this? Right, prior to closing, once the transaction closes, the other agent and yourself, you kind of want to do other things, right? So then we need to just catch the early bus on compliance. Andy, you have a question?
Not really a question. I just wanted to comment that when Rob sends back those emails that says check your messages or fix this, fix that. If you need to respond to him, respond on that same email chain. Don't start a new email. He wants to keep everything in one, plus it helps you because you don't have to put all the information in again.
Thanks, Andy.
That's a great point.
Yeah, thanks,
Absolutely.
Andy.
And plus to it, right, again, it's organization for you, and then you don't have, there's already tons and tons of transactional emails going around and over the place. So you resubmit on that same email chain, right? So when you update, so I needed to make a change here. I click on the three dots, I say update. So at that point, I can then change, I want to change this source to manual, and I'm going to drop my corrected ERS in, and I'm going to say update. Now the form is updated and changed. All you need to do is before you email Rob and say, I'm ready for you to look at it again, you just got to remember, hey, I've got to resubmit that to the market center. Okay. And at that point, he'll look at it again and then get you that approval. So what we're hoping you catch is that as an agent or a TC, once the termite comes in, it's lending. There's really nothing else going on. Like, that's your time to submit all your files for compliance and get it checked. Get time for corrections. And then what everybody's asking, oh, but then there's still the final settlement and there's still the MLS sold. You know what? Like to Latasha's point earlier, now you see the visual. That's not required to get paid on time at closing, because we don't want to tie you down to a seller's agent that has 4 days on Oahu to change their MLS. We don't want to hold your check because the other agent hasn't updated the MLS or escrow hasn't sent you the HARPTA FERPTA, right? So that's why this section is totally separate, though we are asking for you guys to, or your TC, hey, let's just wrap this up and complete it after you guys get paid.
So we're at 2. So any final wrap up, Carrie, that you want to do, and then I'll talk about what we're going to do on the 19th.
No, I guess really that, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. So, right, the process is kind of simple. It's just kind of getting the hang of it. And then the biggest thing that keeps agents from getting paid technically and really is, it's more about the paperwork. So if I would suggest, don't have to, especially on the neighbor islands, but Chad here goes over the purchase contract almost once a month, and we have it on our YouTube, like, or you guys I know have purchase contract classes. I would say watch it over and over again and get really comfortable. That is the thing that keeps agents from getting paid on time the most, and late submittal. So catch the early bus.
Awesome. So part 2 on the 19th, we're actually going to get a little more into the managed commission piece of it. That is what you want to submit 2 weeks prior to close. And so we will follow up with that on the 19th. We'll have a refresher about what Carrie talked about today on compliance. And again, we will email you the PowerPoint presentation. We will add those specific best practices also to the intranet, and you can actually have access to that for the document side. But before we wrap up, is there any question that we did not cover, or there's a new question? I know, Jill, I'm going to reach out to you for a one-on-one, but
Thanks.
any questions that we did not answer?
I do have a quick one real quick. Going back to the archive versus closed. If you accidentally archive something, can you recover it?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So you probably
It's a
didn't need my
two-step-
animated response, but yes, you
Two-step
can.
annihilation. Yeah.
So we can show you that really quickly if you want to know how to do that. Carrie, since you are still host, you want to do that, or do you want? me to
You
jump in?
got it. Now, Bill, are we talking about opportunities?
Correct.
When we were talking earlier about how don't ever archive it after you've closed your transaction, just close it.
You got it. You got it. So what you can do is here on all opportunities and under filter, so you can see everything pop up. Under filters, you can include archived opportunities. So if you did find that you've archived, yeah. And then so you can toggle that and make sure that you see everything.
And then if I can jump in, Bill, there's also another way that you can do it too. I'm all about multi ways of doing it. So you can actually, if you don't go back into all opportunities, which is great, and do the filters, you can also go into your contact card for that specific person. And
Okay.
within that contact card, you'll see the opportunity, and you can unarchive
okay.
that as well.
Okay, perfect. And then one last question from me, at least. On the opportunities page, on the details tab, there's a toggle button on the far right corner called Lost Opportunity. What is that?
So
Go ahead while I pull.
okay, yeah. So I was just gonna say, so what that means is, let's say you're working with me, and I decide that for whatever reason, I am no longer going to pursue looking for a property. I need to put something on hold. Maybe it has some issues with, finances. And so that specific opportunity that you were working with me on, that is a lost opportunity. So then you categorize that as lost. That doesn't mean we can't pick it up later. It's just you're having documentation and notes within that contact card for me saying that, oh, we started this process, that opportunity was lost, but that doesn't mean you can't revisit it or reopen it later.
Okay.
Yeah, so where that would come into play, if anybody out there like super huge conversion numbers guys and ladies, right? That like, hey, I picked up these many appointments, and then where did they go, right? Because I only closed 80% of them. I wanted to get 100. And I think outside of any other questions, Latasha, that was really great. We thank you guys for your time. Part 2 next week. Deeper dive. There are some things that we maybe left hanging today, right? Like, hey, how do I add addenda?
Hold it
Because
next
if-
week or the 19th?
19th.
The 19th. Carrie's
Almost
excited.
the same that time, same that channel. I'm excited. It's super fun to think, and again, it does make sense. You guys, it's just kind of familiarizing. Hey, what can I do in here, and what should I do? Not everything I can eat is good for me, so we want to get you just the direct information. Hey, this is best. This is what we're doing. Dual transactions. How do I do that? We should talk about that on the 19th as well.
So what I
Okay.
would say is this, that any questions that you have, either, put those in some sort of notes on your phone or whatever, and then come to us with questions. And even if you reach out to us between now and the 19th and you have specific questions, we may ask your permission to also share that, because it may be beneficial to also repeat for the 19th. So we will see you again on the 19th. We might see you sooner if you're in another class. But thanks so much for everything, and reach out to both of us if you have any questions. We're here to help. Thanks, Carrie. I love seeing you all the time.
Thank you, Latasha. Thank you guys for
Thank you
coming.
both.
Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.